Good evening. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has again flagged a separate body for disaster responses after damaging flooding on Australia's east coast. He has also announced more funding for Queenslanders as the full extent of flooding and storm damage has been revealed. In Victoria, many residents are on alert as floods hit peak levels. Shortly, we will hear from the Prime Minister, but first to the flooding in Victoria.
For central Victorian residents, they are deeply unsettling scenes. Their streets once again inundated as floodwaters burst riverbanks.
Just Mother Nature showing us who's in charge. Yeah, all we can do is clean up and get on with it.
The impact of the spreading flash flooding felt hardest in Rochester, Seymour and Yea, towns in the valley of the Goulburn River. As floodwaters surged, a woman in her 70s was saved from the torrent when Mitch Smith used a makeshift strap to bide time for up to an hour until her rescue.
If it was my grandma in the car, I'd hope someone would do the same thing.
The Victorian Premier was in Seymour, where flooding peaked at 6.8 metres. Her thoughts with the country towns impacted, where many are still recovering from devastating floods 2 years ago.
As the community is being faced with an emergency situation, the community, the volunteers all pull together.
Around 2,000 Hazaras live in the nearby town of Shepparton, which is predicted to flood in the coming days. At this mosque, State Emergency Service advice and warnings translated to Hazaragi will be distributed to the community.
We share the information through the mosque. We put the notice that translated information. Then the people can come and read that information in their own language.
While Shepparton braces for the worst of the flooding in the coming days, upstream in the town of Murchison, the Goulburn River has already burst its banks. The SES says residents are prepared, but many are still feeling the impacts of the 2022 floods.
You understand they had a real big flood in 2022 that impacted a lot of properties, impacted them, and they're still nervous about it.
The cabins of a holiday park among those once again waterlogged. At least 20 properties have so far reported flood damage.
It's been taking us 4 to 6 weeks a cabin to reopen and costing a lot of money as well.
Those with homes and businesses impacted now able to access emergency payments, but more financial support won't be pledged until floodwaters recede.
Our thoughts are with the people of central Victoria at the moment.
That we will push the federal government for a fair share of funding for affected communities.
With towns still on alert as the flood watch continues, the Prime Minister will travel to Victoria tomorrow.
And reporter Tyza Cusey has been in one of those affected towns in central Victoria, Murchison on the Goulburn River, where residents are tonight preparing for a further threat of flooding.
I've just seen the Country Fire Authority set up a water pump in the centre of town, and they tell me that's to avoid a repeat of 2022 when the river level actually rose above the town's stormwater drainage system. But apart from that, residents seem quietly confident that the river won't be inundating their homes this time. I've spoken to visitors at Riverside Caravan Park, which is still fairly elevated above the river level. Now, the Goulburn River behind me is at a moderate flood level, and that's expected to rise just below major flooding this evening. So thankfully, it's not a repeat of 2022, but the SES is still warning residents to remain vigilant.